All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. I'm Scott Horton. And our next guest is Winslow T. Wheeler. He is Research Fellow at the Independent Institute and Director of the Straus Military Reform Project at the Center for Defense Information. He worked on national security issues for 31 years for members of the U.S. Senate and for the U.S. General Accounting Office, my favorite government agency of all. And he's the author of the book, The Wastrels of Defense, How Congress Sabotages U.S. Security. He's written for every newspaper and important magazine on Earth. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here. And, you know, I was going to cite as one of my footnotes the Independent Institute study, I believe, led by Dr. Higgs. But as far as I know, you helped him do it. Now, I realize that you're also there at independent.org is the website, the Independent Institute. And it's Bob Higgs' estimate that the U.S. spends $1 trillion a year on war, and I wanted to add a couple of footnotes to that before I let you comment, and that was that Mother Jones came up with the same estimate, didn't cite Higgs at all, did all of their own research, and came up with $1 trillion a year. And, of course, Ron Paul, I believe mostly referring to Higgs, and the Independent Institute uses the term, or uses that figure, $1 trillion a year quite often, and they went over at factcheck.org and they decided to dig into it and see if Ron Paul was telling the truth. And they said, yeah, he is $1 trillion a year. That's about right. Is that what you say?
Right. Yeah, we've all done this independently. If you add up the various elements to our complete national security policy, it gets you easily to $1 trillion. It's not just the Pentagon this year at $710 billion. But can include also Homeland Security, the Department of Energy, nuclear weapons, the national security programs of the State Department, including arms aid, Veterans Affairs. Then there's various dogs and cats, which actually adds a substantial amount, and also a share of the interest in the national debt that we can impute to the Defense Department. You can disagree about what that percentage is. The number I picked was about 20%, which is the share of federal spending that is the Pentagon. And you add all those things up together, and you get to $1 trillion pretty quickly.
Dogs and cats, does that mean mercs?
That means about $20 billion in the Treasury Department that's paid for military retirement in addition to the money for military retirement that's in the Pentagon budget, and also some TRICARE costs that are tabulated in the Treasury Department, not in the Defense Department. There's also other things like the Selective Service, the National Defense Stockpile, you know, all kinds of little bits and pieces that are spread all over the government.
All right. Well, you know, I like doing these brain teaser type things. I often complain about how, even in my own mind, the other places on Earth a lot of times are just a shape on the map, and a lot of times not even an accurate one. Instead of, you know, like picturing what downtown Tehran looks like, I don't have any idea. I've never seen any pictures. They never show me what Iran looks like, so I just picture the shape on the map. And it's the same sort of thing with the number of people killed in a terrible explosion in Iraq today. 5 soldiers were killed, huh? But it doesn't, the number, the digit 5, you know, that old Arabic numeral or whatever, that doesn't impute the meaning of what really happened there. The pain, the smell, the grief is left out. And it's the same thing with the word trillion. How much is $1 trillion? 1,000 billion. But what does that mean? I mean, how much is that really?
Well, it's a hell of a lot. I guess there's all kinds of ways you can, you know, get a sense of what $1 trillion is. It's a poor question to ask me. I'm not a mathematician, and I don't have in the front of my head one of those cute little aphorisms like the, you know, number of times that people have, you know, respirated since Jesus was born or whatever, and that comes to $1 trillion. You know, I'm not a good source for that.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, that's kind of a point in and of itself there that, you know, here you're the expert's expert, Winslow. I'm not knocking you at all. And yet it's hard even for you to really wrap your head around what $1 trillion really is, other than, you know, a bunch of digits on a page, a bunch of
Right.
zeros on a page.
Yeah.
You know, how many dollars is that? How many hot meals does that represent? You know, how many private educations could that have afforded, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? We have no way to compare, really.
Right. Yep.
It's amazing. Well, we're sure it's a lot, though, and I'm glad you brought up the interest on the debt there, because it seems like right now the interest payments on the debt are as minimal as they could be because the interest rate is set so artificially low by the central bank. But already we're paying nearly $500 billion a year just in interest on the debt. What are we going to do when the interest rate goes up to 6%?
Well, that's right. And in a few years, if we keep on the ruinous path we're on, the interest on the debt will be larger than the defense budget. Gives you a sense of how totally out of control both the Republicans and Democrats have been in Washington for a long time now. When Clinton left Washington, his most important constructive legacy was a government surplus projected into the future, and Republicans led by George Bush and Democrats led by all sorts of people squandered every penny of that surplus and a lot more away.
Although, I'm thinking that was pretty much based on inflated .com bubble numbers of revenue coming in. Although I'm sure the tax cuts and the wars haven't helped or anything like that. But I don't know if I really believe that it would.
Well,
if they had stayed the course, it would have kept on like that.
I was at the Budget Committee at the end of the Clinton administration, and
really?
everybody seemed to agree that the existence of the surplus was real. They disagreed about the size of it, and they strenuously disagreed about what to do with or about it. But its existence was pretty much agreed to by everybody.
Yeah, and now here we are.
That was a different age.
And now we have what was the national debt then? It was almost 10 then, right? I mean, Clinton was spending $3 trillion a year by the end. Or no, 2. It was Bush had the first $3 trillion budget. But I think Clinton had the first $1 trillion budget and then the first $2 trillion budget in his second term, right?
I don't remember. Can't tell you.
Okay. Well, I think I remember complaining about it at the time. That's all. So I'm looking at this thing at the CDI, the Center for Defense Information at CDI.org, and this report is dated August 30th, 2010. What did Rumsfeld Gates do with $1 trillion? Is there $1 trillion missing or unaccounted for? And then what did they do with it? They
squandered it. In addition to the $1 trillion Congress appropriated for the wars after 9/11, Congress also appropriated an additional $1 trillion for the so-called base budget of the Pentagon, the non-war parts of it, $1 trillion in 10 years. And after that trillion has been spent, we've got a Navy and Air Force that is smaller than it was 10 years ago. And the Army is marginally larger by about 3 combat brigade teams at gigantic cost, more than $80 billion. And its equipment is also older than it was 10 years ago. In other words, with an additional $1 trillion, the people running the Pentagon, including Rumsfeld and Gates, made our military forces smaller and older. It's really phenomenal.
I wonder how much they spent total on aluminum Humvees to send our soldiers out on IED lottery missions in. Has anybody ever broken that number down separate from the rest?
I'm sure that number exists, but I don't know it.
I'll have to find it. I have a note here from my friend Malcolm Garris. Being science-minded, I'm reminded the universe is only 13.7 billion years old, or 6,000 years if you're a fundamentalist. We'll be right back.